Hey, Chris, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be on with you.
We are glad to have you here because you have a wealth of knowledge in a particular area of personal finance that a lot of people have trouble with. So we're super glad to have you to kind of break some of this stuff down and help us get a better understanding. But before we do that, can you take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody that's tuned in and let them know what you're all about?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. I'm Chris Costello. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of a company called Bloom, spelled with three O's. Bloom is almost a five-year-old company. And prior to that, I was a traditional financial advisor. I started in the business in 1995, way back when they used to call people stockbrokers in the mid-90s, and eventually evolved into a financial advisor, wealth advisor. And our niche prior to Bloom, and this was while we were working at some of the big financial firms based on Wall Street, our niche was helping people make the transition from work life into retirement. And in 2004, again, this is still before Bloom, we left and went out on our own, opened our own firm, independent firm, still helping people make the transition into retirement. And by that time, we had some experience. We were, getting a reputation in our town. And I share that with you because that always kind of bothered me, that the type of clients at that time we were helping, which is generally folks that had at least $1 million in their investment portfolio, the thing that nagged at me was that my own mom and dad didn't even qualify anywhere close to being a client of the firm that I owned and started. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a jerk. I was helping my folks, they were clients, but had I not been in the business, my parents would have had no options for help. And so that was a big reason why in 2013, we struck out and we wanted to start a brand new firm, specifically helping people that don't have, $1 million in their account, that don't generally have access to financial advisors. Most advisors want you to have a certain amount of wealth before they'll talk to you and help you. And we wanted to build Bloom in a manner that could help anybody in America, regardless of how much money they had socked away.
Why is the system kind of set up that way, right? Because if you are a financial advisor, why do I have to wait till I've already accumulated some wealth in order to get some advice on how to accumulate wealth? I've always kind of been curious about why, and I'm sure there's a reason. I've just always been curious as to why, those standards are the way that they are, and so that leaves, the majority out when it comes to this.
It totally does. I mean, most Americans don't have $1 million. Most Americans don't have $500,000. And so I'm glad you asked that question, because truthfully, that was something that we believed all along. We used to say that we thought the financial services industry business model was flawed. Flawed in a sense that arguably the people that needed the advice and help the least were the ones that advisors were clamoring to help. And the reason for that, I mean, if we want to boil it down, is it's basically, when you're in a service business, we're all dealing with a finite amount of time each day. And so do I spend, 8 hours a day helping 10 clients that each have 10 grand, or do I spend that same time helping 10 clients that each have $1 million? And I'm thinking, hey, I've got a duty and an obligation to my own family. I'm going to help the folks that can afford to pay our firm a lot more money. And again, I don't think I was a selfish person. I was just trying to do the best at that time for my family. But clearly it was something that bugged me. It was clearly something that bugged my co-founder, Kevin, and that is, it shouldn't be that way. The people that actually need the help the most are the folks that don't yet have $1 million. And so the great thing about technology, the great thing about how we built Bloom, and this isn't just Bloom, it's not just in the financial services sector. Today, technology is democratizing a lot of different sectors. It's bringing services to people that didn't previously have certain services. And that's what I love about the power of technology is here we are. Before I got on the air with you, I spent about an hour answering questions from our clients, because we have a service at Bloom. It's called Ask the Advisor. So if you're a client of Bloom, you have access to advisors. And so here I am answering questions for people that, and I know how much money they've got in the account. Maybe they had $8,000 in their 401k, and I'm spending time and we're answering their questions they have about what to do with old 401ks, or paying off debt, or refinancing a house, or saving for college, or how much should I be saving for retirement. And I'm like, these are the people that need this help the most. And I love the fact that now we have a tool and a service and a product that can help that segment of the market, because we talk about all the time at Bloom, it does not matter how much money you have, doesn't matter where you work. Today at Bloom, if you've got a 401k, if you've got a retirement account with your employer, and you know your login credentials, that's all you need to be a client of Bloom. I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about that today. Sorry to get off topic a little bit there.
No, great advice. Now, here at His and Her Money, people ask us all the time for like, okay, I want to get started with investing. Should I buy this stock, that stock, or how should I do this? And our answer, time and time again, is always start with your employer and investing through a 401k or a similar vehicle. And sometimes we get the deer in the headlights look like, so what's a 401k? And so that's why we wanted to invite you on, because you are an expert in this subject, to kind of give us a thorough understanding about how we can get started using products like this. So can you, for starters, kind of break down what a 401k is, and it's similar products, 403b and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So we can get like a baseline understanding exactly of what this type of investment vehicle is.
Sure. And this is a very appropriate topic, because today there's about 90 million Americans at this very moment right now that have access to, that are actually participating in a retirement account that's sponsored by their employers. And 401k is the big, the vast majority of those accounts are 401ks. You're right. Could be a 403b if you're a teacher, you're a nurse, maybe you work for non-for-profit. Could be a TSP, a thrift savings plan, if you're a government employee. But those are all employer-sponsored retirement accounts. Unfortunately, there's also about 55 to 60 million hardworking Americans that go to work every single day that don't even have access to one of those retirement accounts. And that's a whole other problem in and of itself that absolutely has to be addressed. But for your audience today, let's talk about those 90 million Americans that have the ability to participate in one of those accounts. And so, again, 401k could be 403b, maybe it's a TSP. So the first thing that I would explain is that kind of how these things work. This is an account, and it's terribly named. 401k is a terrible name for this, but it was taken from a code in the tax law that basically talked about how you can defer some of your current savings today for use in retirement. And so these accounts kind of got started in the late 70s, really kind of hit their stride in the late 80s. And today, given the numbers, obviously they're a pretty common way to save for retirement. So what is this thing? It's a way in which you can take some of your salary today and basically defer it into an account that's yours. It's your money. And this account basically is a way in which you can start to accumulate some money, some savings, and then invest it to grow, so that at some point down the road in retirement, you've got a pool of dollars to tap into. And this is incredibly important, because my guess is, if we could do a quick poll of everybody that's going to listen to this, the vast majority of people that are going to listen to this don't have access to what they used to call a pension plan. My grandpa, when he retired, he was a pilot, and he retired in 1976. He got a pension check, which was a check that was paid to him, came in his mailbox every single month for the rest of his life. My grandma's 99, still living and still likely getting that pension check that my grandma or my grandpa triggered years ago. But most people today, aside from my good buddy who's in law enforcement, aside from my other friend who's a teacher, most people today do not have access to a pension. They're not going to get a pension. So effectively, that pension plan was something that your employer used to contribute and put money into. Nowadays, those being gone, the onus is on all of our shoulders now. Now the responsibility most of the time falls squarely on us as individuals to save money for retirement. And most people Most Americans are going to win the lottery. May not sell a business for a bunch of dough. Most Americans may not get a big inheritance. So the reason why I say that is these 401ks, these retirement accounts, are likely going to be the single biggest way in which somebody's ever going to be able to stop working. By doing a good job of socking money away, that is how you put yourself in a position at some point down the road to be able to stop working. Okay, and you may not stop working. You might continue because you enjoy your job, but maybe you want to quit and travel. Maybe you want to start doing volunteer work. Maybe you want to start your own business. The thing about getting yourself, and I know you guys talk a lot about this on your show, getting yourself to a position where you're financially independent gives you choice. The power's back in your lap. Now, I might still continue at my job, but I remember folks years ago that were getting close to retirement. They'd have this rule. It was called like the 3-strike rule. And anytime they had like 3 things at work that made them mad, they knew that they could leave and retire because they had saved too much money. And that gives you a tremendous peace of mind when you know, hey, if things go bad, I'm out of here. So back to the 401k. Again, we're talking about a way in which you can take some of your money out of your paycheck, defer it into this account, and then invest it for retirement. Now, the first thing that people need to do, if they don't already know the answer, is to find out if your employer offers a 401k. The second question you need to ask is, does the employer match? So what does match mean? Match means that in some cases, your employer will actually match some of the dollars that you put into the account. I can't tell you how many times we catch wind of the fact where people aren't even contributing enough to get the employer match. That is 100% free money. That's like your employer saying, hey, we're going to give you a little bit of a raise, and you saying, nah, you keep it. I don't need that raise. And so please find out, if you don't know the answers yet, does your employer offer a 401k, and then do they match? And if they match, you need to make sure that you are contributing enough to get those employer dollars, because again, like I said a moment ago, that is entirely free money.
Now, what about the person that asks those questions, and you may get a group that are listening that their employer tells them no? Because we've talked to people that are fully employed, and like you said, I think in these instances, mostly they have been non-for-profit situations to where, or they may work for a mom and pop type business, a startup, and there's no 401k. Or they may go to their HR department and find out that there is a 401k or 403b, but there is no match. So if they hear no to either one of those questions, what's your advice to them?
Great question. Okay, so if you don't have access to a 401k and or there's no employer match, then I would actually I would back it up and I'd say, okay, let's start to prioritize things. Do you have any bad debts? Do you have any student loan debt? And if you have any of those, the very first thing I would say is put all available resources to attacking that debt. And I know you guys talk about this as well too. There's nothing better than the liberating feeling of getting out of debt. There's nothing better. I mean, I'm not going to say you're bulletproof at that point, but like a lot of things can go wrong in your life, and if you're debt free, you're still going to be okay. And not to mention just the way it kind of changes your mindset when you know that you don't owe anybody anything, and if you're debt free and you happen to find yourself in a crappy job, man, it's so much easier to leave that job if you know that you don't have bills stacked up to here. And so we could spend obviously a lot of time talking about this, but the point is first and foremost, before you start thinking about saving for retirement, if you've got credit card and debt and student loan debt, please attack that first. The second thing we talk to folks about if they're debt free is building at least a 3-month cushion of emergency reserves. That's basically in place. That's kind of like if you or your spouse loses a job, you don't want to have to be in a position where you have to go find a job quickly, because you might end up taking something that you don't want. So if you can build up 3 months of emergency reserve, tuck it away, hide it, bury it in some savings account, that's there, again, really catastrophic emergencies and or job loss. So you've got some reserves to live off so you can take your time finding that job. So let's say you've got the crappy debt paid, taken care of, no credit cards, no student loans, no high interest car loans. You've got 3 months socked away of living expenses, rat holed away. At that point, I would invite folks to begin to start to save for retirement. If you don't have access to a 401k through your employer, like we talked about earlier, a great place to start is an IRA or a Roth IRA. I would recommend a big name like a Schwab or a Fidelity. Today, Bloom does not manage IRAs. We will in the future. But today, a place like a Schwab, a Vanguard, or a Fidelity is a good place to go open up a regular IRA or a Roth IRA and start contributing to that. It's a little bit more of a hassle. You don't have the payroll deductions like you do at the 401k, but it can be done.
The Sunday Night Sit Down is being brought to you by our friends at Policy Genius. That's your go-to stop to meet all of your insurance needs because they have a totally free tool on their website where all you have to do is put in your information and you will get instant quotes from multiple reputable insurance providers so that you can make the best decision possible when it comes time to purchase insurance. To find out more details, all you have to do is go to hisandhermoney.com/policygenius. And I'm also curious about, because I'm going back in my mind to like the first time I attempted to, and for me it was a TSP because I was in the military at the time. It was a thrift savings plan. But I got that paperwork, went to HR, I got the paperwork, and it was just like this massive packet with all these numbers and percentages, and it was like it may as well have been written in Chinese to me. So when a person unfamiliar with 401k, 403b, or whatever, and this is like their first endeavor, and they want to position themselves now to have a good retirement, what should they be looking for in the midst of all that information that they're going to get to help them make a good choice as to which option? Because the 401k is not the investment; it's the
right.
You have to pick the investment to go inside of the 401k. So when you're looking through these pages of options, like what should you be really honing on to help you make your decision?
Yeah. First of all, by the way, thank you for your service too. I appreciate that. So actually, let me share a personal story with you. That'll maybe illustrate that a little bit. So about 4 years ago, when we were in the early stages of building Bloom, we needed test 401k accounts to kind of test the software and the algorithm. So I call up my younger sister, Annie, and Annie's 4 years younger than me. And I said, Annie, we're building Bloom. We need some test 401ks. Can I get your login credentials? Okay, we can test out the software on your account, and amazingly, she shared those with me. And so I get into my sister's 401k, and I'm appalled to see that my little sister, at the time she was about 35, 36 years old, she had every bit of her retirement savings. It was her whole entire nest egg. I knew that. It was all sitting in the dang money market fund, uninvested. Okay. Uninvested, yeah. And I look a little bit more, and like she had made like just almost no money in this account. So I pick up the phone, I call her, and I said, Annie, did you just recently get scared out of the market? Like, were you invested and then something freaked you out and you bailed out and you went into the money market, you cashed out, so to speak? And she said, no. This is what made me think of the story when you said this a second ago. She said, no. 5 years ago, when I started with this company, they gave me that packet of information. And she said, I was looking at all these choices, large this and international and bonds and money market and stable value. And she's like, none of that made any sense to me. And she said, I figured one of these days I'd ask my brother, a financial advisor, for help. Well, one of these days turned into 5 years. And my sister made like no money in her retirement nest egg for 5 years. And here's to make the story even worse. Those 5 years happened to be a time period. It was 2009 to about 2014. The stock market doubled during that time period. If you remember, that was after the financial crisis, and the freaking market doubled, and she did not get any of that growth. And this is my sister, and I know her financial situation. And the other thing I like to say, My sister was valedictorian of a huge high school class. She was almost a 4.0 girl in college. She's way smarter than I am. But we say this all the time at Bloom. Screwing up your 401k or being confused by that stuff doesn't discriminate. Like, everybody suffers from that. It doesn't matter where you went to school, what your education is, anything. Like, this is not intuitive stuff. People don't just come out of high school and college and know how much to have in large cap versus international stocks, or what bonds are versus stocks. And so this is why we think this is such a big problem, why we're so excited about what we're doing at Bloom, because Bloom is a solution. So somebody that's like starting a new job and they're getting offered that 401k, there's a small percentage of people that want to do it themselves and dig into that. There's another equally small percentage of the people that actually are enough to just take that package to their financial advisor and get help. But for the rest of us, for the rest of Americans, so one cheat or one hack that I'll give you with your 401k is, if you don't want to have to study what stocks and bond investments are, just sign up for Bloom. Just let Bloom handle it for you. We charge a flat fee. It doesn't matter where you work, doesn't matter how big your account is. It's $10 a month, so it's actually less. It's actually less money than people are paying for Netflix today. And this is a way that you're actually taking and making an investment in your future. And then all you have to do is sign up for the account. Get $50 in your 401k. It doesn't even matter what investments you pick. Just make your initial contribution, put $25, $50 into it, something to start off with. Come sign up for Bloom. Let Bloom then handle it for you going forward, and we can pick all the investments, keep it updated for you, everything. It's a way you can kind of outsource or wash your hands. Or basically, what Bloom's technology is doing is the same thing I used to do for my $1 million clients. I mean, when they'd come to me, I would tell them exactly how to invest the account, whether it was their 401k or some other account. We do everything for them as far as picking those investments, and now people can get the same thing for $10 a month.
When dealing with these investment vehicles, what's the most that can be put in, and how does one figure out, okay, how much should I be putting away in my 401k?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's actually the very first question that somebody, even before they think about the investments, that's the question they need to think about. So let's go back again a little bit to what we were talking about earlier. So let's now assume in this scenario that you've got access to the 401k, and the employer makes some kind of a match. Okay, if you have bad debt, credit card debt, student loan debt, high interest car debt, I want you to only contribute enough to get the company match, not a penny more. Okay, so some of your folks today that are listening to this that might be socking away more than they need to in terms of maxing out the company match, if they have credit card or student loan debt, I would actually advise them to back off those forms. And again, take those excess dollars and attack the debt. Okay, so you've got the 401k, you've got the employer match. If you've got that crappy debt, I only want you contributing just enough to get the employer match until that debt is gone. Okay, at that point, then we talked about this earlier, make sure you've got money in an emergency reserve. I like to say 3 months of your living. Take a look at what your living expenses are each month, multiply those by 3, and have a goal to get that rat hole into a savings account. Okay. If you have no debt, and if you've got that 3-month saving reserve, then the question really is, a lot of people say, what's the appropriate amount to save? The appropriate amount to save is what you can afford to save at that point. It's not really sometimes there's some rules of thumb, and I think ideally you hear sometimes say take 10% and save that. Other times you hear 15%. I'm more of, again, get rid of the debt, get the savings reserve in place, and at that point, put as much dollars into it as your own budget allows. Some people, their budget's going to allow them to sock away 10 grand. Other people are going to be able to save the maximum. If you're under 50, you can save $18,500 a year through your 401k. And again, if you're not paying on debt and you've already got your emergency reserve set up and you're making a decent income, then don't think of it in a percentage term. Try and get as close to that $18,500 as you can. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. some people are going to go to their HR department and they're going to find out they have two options: a traditional 401k and a Roth
Yep.
401k. Can you break
Yeah.
down the difference between those two? And if you have two choices, is one better than the other?
Yeah. And more 401k plans today are offering that Roth 401k feature, which is great because I do think it is wise. The advice I give to our clients all the time and that our advisors give clients is if you find out you have access to a Roth 401k, we think it is very wise to actually split your contributions. So whatever amount you've decided is appropriate in your budget to contribute to your 401k, if you've got that Roth 401k option, actually take your contributions and put half of those into the regular 401k and the other half into the Roth 401k. And let's talk about the difference between the two. The regular traditional 401k, those contributions are made with what's called pre-tax dollars. Well, what in the heck does that mean? So the benefit of one of the benefits of the 401k, in addition to kind of the automated nature of the payroll deductions, is that the regular traditional 401k is made with pre-tax dollars. And I'll give you a real simple example to illustrate that. Let's say you make 50 grand a year. Let's say that's your salary, okay? If you're not contributing to the 401k, for the most part, all $50,000 is going to be taxed by the IRS, subject to income taxes, right? If you are contributing to a 401k, though, let's say you decide that you can sock away $5,000 a year into this 401k. Now what happens is the $50,000 income, you're taking $5,000 of that $50,000 income and deferring that into your 401k. Now the IRS is only going to tax you on $45,000. So you've taken that $5,000 of your salary and dodged being taxed on that legally. You've escaped taxation on that. So instead of, whatever tax bracket you're in, let's assume, just to keep the math simple, that about 20% is going to go to taxes. Well, you take that $5,000 and you put it into your 401k. That's $5,000 that isn't being taxed, and 20% taxes on $5,000. My quick math tells me that's like $1,000. That means by you saving your own money into your 401k, you're also going to pay $1,000 less in taxes using that example. Okay. Now you've got that $5,000 in the 401k. As it's invested and growing over the years, okay, that growth is not taxed as it's growing. So that $5,000 as it's becoming 6, 7, 10, 15, 20,000 over the years and decades, none of that growth while it's in the account is going to be taxed. The regular 401k, those pre-tax contributions, none of that money, none of that growth gets taxed until you retire and start to take it out way down the road. At that point, it's just taxed as ordinary income. Okay? Now we've got, like you were asking about, the Roth 401k. The Roth 401k is different in that the contributions are made with after-tax dollars. So you don't get that current tax dodge that I joked about earlier. So the dollars, let's say you've got 50 grand and you choose to put $5,000, all $5,000 into the Roth 401k. Again, those are made with after-tax dollars, so you're not getting that benefit. So why would you ever do that? Why would you forego that current benefit? The reason is that money goes into the Roth 401k, all the growth, no taxes on that, just like the pre-tax 401k. The big difference on the Roth 401k is in retirement, all of the contributions and growth, none of it's taxed then either. Okay? So the real simple way to think about this is pre-tax 401k, I call it the traditional 401k, you get a tax benefit today, but the Roth 401k, you get a tax benefit down the road. That's why I like to split our clients' contributions between the two. Have some of the money, enjoy the tax benefit today with your contributions. The other half of your contributions, let's put that into an account where you're going to be tax benefited down the road. So 50-50.
Now I want to talk about kind of tracking the performance. They followed your advice, they've gotten enrolled, and now it's time to, I guess, keep an eye on it. And my thought is rooted in a story, and I don't think I've ever shared it through his and her money. But the very first time I tried to, do the right thing with my money and invest in a mutual fund, I did that. I found a local provider of mutual funds near the Army base that I was at, and I got signed up, set up payroll deductions, and was going. But every month I would get those statements in the mail. And every month I would open those statements, and it was like driving me crazy because it was like up and down, and then it started going down, down, down. And then I can't take this anymore, and I just stopped it and got out of there because I just couldn't handle it. So I believe it's important to track performance. So let's talk about, how do you track how your 401k is doing, and what's your advice as we're tracking our progress?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that. Do you remember what year roughly that was that you had that experience?
Either '01 or '02.
Okay. Okay. Do you remember what happened in '01?
That was when all that tech stuff was going on, right?
Exactly. It was one of the biggest downturns in the market. So your timing, no fault of yours, sucked. And nobody can time the market. So I'm really joking about that. It's just yeah, basically the dot-com bubble burst in like March of 2000, and then we had 9/11 obviously in 2001, and then 2002 was a crappy year as well too. I remember vividly sitting at lunch in March of 2003, having lunch at a sports bar and watching March Madness, watching the basketball games and they had like basketball games on half the TVs. And then on a couple of the TVs, this is March of '03, they had, I'll never forget, remember those green tracer Tomahawk missiles when we were going to war with Iraq? I remember them showing, the news was showing the footage of those things. And this is, again, March of '03. We'd just come off 2.5 years of just crappy markets. And I remember sitting there thinking at lunch, here we go. We're going to war. This is going to be a terrible year. '03 is going to suck as well too. Well, you know what happened in '03? It was a huge year for the stock market. Things came back in a very big way. So had you stuck around for a few more years, you would have gotten rewarded in an extreme. You would have gotten all those losses back in a matter of time. And this is an important point to talk about, because this is where a lot of people really screw themselves up, is that they start investing or they start into a 401k and they start to see, just like you did, a period of time where things go down. And if there's one big message that people, if I could impart on people today that they would remember from this, is that I will guarantee that while you're an investor, your account is going to decline in value. I promise anybody that's an investor for any length of time will see their account value go down, and that's okay. Not only is it okay, we actually need it to go down from time to time, because if the markets went straight up, if they never declined, there'd be no risk in investing, and therefore a lot of the returns would go away. I mean, the reason why people have been rewarded in such a big way by investing over time is they've had to subject themselves to that bull crap of the market going up and down. But if you can just sit through it, and I know this is kind of an overused cliche, but that would have applied to you if you would have just kept hanging on. Not only that, if you would have kept investing your money, think back at the prices of some of those investments back in '01, how cheaply you would have been acquiring those. I hate seeing young people with 401ks when the market goes down, like they stop contributing or they'll bail out. That's the time you should be doubling down. If you think about it, people that are not yet retired, you should actually want the market to go down. Because if you're still saving money, if you're still pumping money into your investments in your 401k, you're accumulating more investments at lower prices. I'll put it an example. Let's say you were saving $100 a month into a mutual fund. I don't care if it was a mutual fund like you had or through your 401k like we're talking about. And in that $100, let's say you're buying, just to use a simple example, let's say you're just buying one mutual fund. And each share of that mutual fund costs $50. Okay? So with that $100, you're buying 2 shares each month, right? If the market gets clobbered and the stock market goes down and that mutual fund tanks and goes down and the price drops in half. All of a sudden, you were buying it at $50 a share. Now you're buying it $25 a share. So how many shares with that $100 are you buying? 4. You were buying 2. Now you're buying 4. So you're buying more at a lower price. And I think what a lot of people think is they think, oh shit, it's going down. This thing's going to go to zero. And yes, if you're buying one individual stock, it's possible that that individual stock can go to zero. Enron, WorldCom, I mean, heck, even GM in the financial crisis, the common stock was wiped out. But if you're putting into a mutual fund, because a mutual fund, as you know, is invested in hundreds, sometimes thousands of individual stocks. And the chances of that thing like going totally to zero, I mean, we'd have to have almost like a doomsday scenario for that mutual fund to go to zero. Is it going to go down from time to time? Absolutely. But when it goes down, if you're systematically putting dollars into that fund without even having to think, you buy more shares. And then look at the other way. Hot, it's been for the last 9 years, and you were buying each of those shares at $50 a share with your $100. But let's say it goes through the roof, and now it gets to be $100 a share. How many shares are you buying at that time? Only 1. So it's like the beauty of dollar cost averaging works in your favor without you even having to think about it or time the market. When it goes down, you buy more. When it goes higher, you buy less. Let's think about it this way. Why is it, as human beings, our wires are crisscrossed in our heads? We know if we're going to go buy a new car, we know to go try and get a deal on a car, right? We don't walk onto the car lot, the used car lot, and tell the salesman, show me the most overpriced car you have on the lot. That's what I want. We know as consumers, whether it's the grocery store, whether it's we're buying a piece of jewelry, we're buying a car, whatever, we are wired to recognize that sales are good. You know, we like sales. But when the market goes on sale, for some reason, we react totally different. And if we could just get more people to think about their behavior in the context of as a consumer when it comes to their investments, man, that's more than half the battle right there. So many people have decent investments, decent mutual funds, decent 401ks, and then the first sign of market weakness, they're like, I'm out. You know, I sell everything. I got to get out. I can't lose money. And then they stop contributing at the wrong time. And this is different if you're 75 years old and you're in retirement. But I'm guessing a lot of your listeners are still working. They're still working to sock money away. And please understand that the market will go down. And the next time the market goes down, if you've got the ability in your budget, please add some more money to your 401k at that time, because you'll be buying everything on sale.
Now, some people on one hand, they know they need to get involved in their 401k and start putting money away. On the other hand, they're like, I don't have time to figure this out, and I don't want to figure this out. How does Bloom simplify the process for people like that?
Yeah, so if you've got a 401k today, or if you're about to sign up for a 401k today, let's actually start with the folks that do have a 401k, because I know there's a lot of your listeners that have a 401k or 403b. If right now you're feeling like, you know what, a question that I usually ask anytime I get a chance to speak to a room of people, I'll ask them, I'll say, do you feel confident that you've picked the right investments inside your 401k? Raise your hand. And hardly any hands go up in the room. So if your listeners are kind of feeling like, you know what, I'm not quite certain that I've done a good job of investing my money inside the 401k, I would encourage everybody to go to our website and get a free analysis at least. At a very bare minimum, it'll take you a grand total of 3, maybe 4 minutes. The analysis on your current 401k is totally free. I promise you the hardest question we're going to ask you is, when do you want to smash your alarm clock? Obviously, when do you want to retire? That's the hardest question we ask. We don't ask a bunch of stupid, complex questions. We're not going to take a pint of blood or anything. It's a fairly fun, simple process to go through. 3 or 4 minutes, and you'll get a totally free analysis on the health of your 401k. So we use the image of a flower, given our name Bloom, to convey the health of your account. You know, is your flower healthy? Is it dead and dying? We'll show you that. And then you can decide for yourself, if you want to hire Bloom to start managing that account for you. And the technology will go into the account, reallocate things for you, change it as market change it as you get closer to retirement. And the only fee that we charge is $10 per month. And not only that, the way our algorithm is programmed, we know how to find the lowest cost funds inside your 401k plan. So on average, our clients before Bloom to after Bloom save almost 40% in hidden fees inside their 401k. So a lot of times, depending on your balance, depending on your 401k, like that $10 a month fee, a lot of times just with the fee savings alone of using lower cost funds in your plan, a lot of times we can pay for that.
So if people want to get started or learn more about Bloom and the services that you all have, how do they do that?
Very simply, Bloom.com, and just don't forget, Bloom has 3 O's. BLOOOM.com. If you type it in with 2 O's, you're going to end up at an online cosmetics company. So you'll know you're at the wrong place. So Bloom with 3 O's, and you can get a completely free analysis on the health of your 401k. So at a minimum, today, if you've got a 401k, please take the 3 or 4 minutes and get that free analysis, and then decide for yourself after that if you want us to help you out with it.
Well, Chris, this has been super helpful. You've given a lot of information, and you've helped a lot of people kind of understand a little bit better about the process of the 401k and how to get started. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come and share this with our audience today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for what you guys are doing, putting out the good word on helping people change their lives for the better. And one of the things, I'll end with this. What you're doing, what we're doing at Bloom, sometimes we don't get to see the effects of the work that we're doing. Just know that we're changing people's lives. I mean, that's what motivates us here at Bloom. This startup is doing a tech startup is hard, and if it wasn't for the fact that we knew, and again, I may be long gone, have been retired or something, I just know that at some point down the road, people are going to think, whether it's your listeners, whether it's folks who have been helped by Bloom, that their lives were changed because of the advice and help they got. And that's pretty cool. And I'm very, very proud to be involved with that.